Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. We'll just be going over how I like to breed Bosemani rainbow fish. Now the ones I have here specifically are from Aves Creek or Aves Creek. I don't really know how to say it, but it's from that area. There are a lot of really cool variants. There's like the normal pet store variant, which in my opinion is a little bit lower quality than the ones from specific creeks like Uter and Atinjo and these ones. So I like the nicer strains that are pure a little bit better. But this strategy I like to use for breeding them will work for pretty much any of the strains. So in this video, I'm just going to assume that you already know how to take care of the fish and all those different kind of simple things. They are pretty easy fish, so I'm sure you guys will have no trouble. If you need help with that, maybe I'll make a video in the future, or you guys can watch many of the other videos or read something online. But the first thing you really need to do is getting nice adult fish that are breeding. Now, I think this is the most difficult part. Sometimes at stores, they tend to be a little bit small and they don't really breed that well. Something I've found is that at a very small size, the fish produce much smaller eggs, and then in turn, the fry are much harder to raise. So what I like doing is just growing the fish out to almost max size. As you guys can see here, these are 4 inches or so, four-ish inches. So they're pretty big. These are full adult size, I think, and I like growing them out bigger because it's a lot easier to raise the fry if the fry are a little bit bigger. But yeah, I think the most difficult part is getting nice adults. So what I like doing is what I generally do is getting a school of 6 fish from your store or whoever it is, and growing them out and conditioning them well. So when it comes to sexing them, that's also very simple. The males will be really bright orange. I'll try to put up some pictures of both the males and females that I have. It's pretty simple. Once they're adult size, it's very easy to tell. The males have a lot more color, and the females are a little bit more bland. They're still nice, however. Like I really like the stripes and things that I have on these females. So when it comes to breeding them, I honestly would just breed them in the group that you have. I don't really find too many issues. If there's too many males, sometimes the males can be a little bit rough on the females. So if I'm going to breed them in a different tank, I usually just put 1 male, 2 females, and just go with that. I have great success. Although I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I feel like it doesn't really matter too much what the ratio is. They'll always breed, and they're pretty simple. In this tank specifically, I have a little mop on the side, and they do breed in there a little bit. A lot of the other fish do predate on the eggs. It is a community tank. However, I do have a lot of these rainbows already, as you guys will see later in the video. So I'm not looking to get too many numbers. I'm mainly just showing you guys this just for the video. But if you guys really wanted to produce a lot of them, I would put them in a separate tank. I used a 20-gallon for a long time. Put the mop in there, pull the mop, and just breed them that way. It's the same process. It's pretty similar. I like breeding them at around 80, 81 degrees, something like that. pH, they like pretty much any pH. Like I wouldn't worry too much about it as long as it's within reason. Don't go too high, don't go too low. It's pretty much the same condition that they do well in. Hardness wise, I like keeping the water a little bit softer. I find there's less fungus issues, but that's not super important either. Yeah, breeding conditions are super easy. So I think the second most challenging part of breeding these rainbows is hatching the fry. So once the rainbows lay eggs in the mop, what I like doing is just pulling the mop out and kind of squeezing out all the water, because it's a lot harder to see where anything is in the mop with the water in. So I just squeeze all the water out, and then as you guys can see here, it's a lot easier to see where the eggs are. And what I like doing is just picking the eggs out individually. Now this is a little bit labor intensive and time consuming, so if you guys want, you can just throw the whole mop in to a different container. And in this different container, what I like doing is using methylene blue. So I find that this really helps with the fungus. For some reason, whenever I pick the eggs and I put them into a little cup or whatever without methylene blue, the eggs kind of all clump together. I don't know why that happens, but it just does in my experience. And what happens is if one of them gets fungus, then the entire clump gets kind of spoiled. So I find it's a lot easier just with the methylene blue. It prevents a lot of the issues that I normally had. And I find that it doesn't really affect the hatching or the fry, or it doesn't really go bad. I've had this methylene blue in here for like 2 weeks probably, and it's been doing completely fine. So in 81, 82 degree water, I find that the Bosemani rainbows hatch in about 7 days. That's my experience. Maybe for you it'll be a little bit faster, a little bit slower. I'm not exactly sure with that, but for me it's been 7 days. So after 7 days, as you guys can see here, there's like tiny little fry. Now these fry are really kind of fragile. They're pretty easy to kill. So what I would do is I would be really careful with them. What I like doing is getting a little shrimp net, netting them out, and moving them into a breeder box that I flip around and keep it on the inside of the tank. So this makes sure that there's no flow, because what I found is these fish are really weak and small. So if there's too much flow in the breeder box, they kind of just get sucked in and stuck to one of the sides, or they don't do well. So you have to make sure that they don't expel too much energy swimming around. and yeah, make sure to feed them all. So what I like feeding is the golden pearls, 5 to 50 micron. Now this is the most important part when it comes to raising the fish. Rainbows are absolutely tiny, and they only eat from the surface in my experience, or they eat when something's in the water column. So what I like doing is just getting a little bit of the golden pearls and sprinkling it on the top of the water, and then they'll kind of some of it will fall down in the water column and they'll just consume the golden pearls. Again, this is the 5 to 50 micron. You can probably buy it on Amazon, whatever. Like, I don't know where you can get it, but it's pretty easy to get. It's a really great food. It's super high protein. I love it. I feed my rams, baby angels, like a lot of different fish. So just having this on hand is really, really helpful. So I like to keep the rainbows on this food for a week to 2 weeks. Some of them grow faster, some of them go slower. So what I like doing is after about 2 weeks, I start introducing baby brine shrimp. Now, this is when the growth rate really starts to accelerate. I find that on the golden pearls, they grow pretty slow. So they're still very small. And the ones you see here are about, I think, a month and a little bit older than a month old. So they're still very small. There's some that are a month and a half old, as you guys can see the larger ones in the back. So they do grow pretty slow. They're still really tiny, but they're eating baby brine shrimp. And once they're at this size, I also like feeding decapsulated brine shrimp. Now, this has made my job a lot easier. I recently discovered this food, and it's been great. It's basically just brine shrimp eggs without the shell on them. I'm not sure how they process them, but it's pretty cheap. It's a really high protein food. I like feeding a lot of my fish. They seem to love it. I'm not sure how it affects growth rates. All of the Bosemani rainbows I've grown have been on decapsulated brine shrimp. So maybe if you fed them live baby brine shrimp, they'll grow a little bit faster. I'm not exactly sure how that would go, but they're pretty bulletproof from here. As you guys can see, this is a 20-gallon tank, and I probably have like 150, 200 in here, and they're doing great. Now in this tank, I just do water changes every 3 or so days. I do 25%, just 5 gallons out, and they do fine. I also have some rams and other fish in here, so they're pretty hardy after this point. One thing I've realized while growing them is they grow really slow. So I have some older fish here, which are about 3 months old, maybe a little bit under 3 months old, some of them, maybe a little bit over some of them. So they're still quite small. I think they're an inch, maybe a little bit over an inch for some of them, under an inch for some of them. So they do grow really, really slow. I'm not sure if this is just because I have the specific Aves Creek. I'm not sure if the Aves Creek goes slower or what the case exactly is, but they have been growing really slow for me. But yeah, they've been doing great. I also feed these guys pretty much any flake food or anything like that. I also forgot to mention, if you have a smaller fry, if you just crush up some flakes, like, they'll take that as well. They're not super picky when it comes to food, and they're pretty easy to raise. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope this helps you guys if you guys are having any trouble with Bosemani rainbows. If you guys have any tips for raising the fry quicker, let me know. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, just leave them in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.